afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Starcub Review. I'm your host, as always, Starcub. And on today's agenda, I'm going to do a simple and easy one that is very, very highly underrated, not only as a franchise, but as a sequel that divided a lot of people, was very, very polarized. People either loved it or hated it, or just outright disrespected it altogether and disregarded it as a sequel to a franchise, and that is David Fincher's Alien 3, which, in my opinion, is just so highly underrated as an Alien film, and one of my favorite in the franchise. Just one. This film is. I have a lot of passion for this film because Alien 3 in itself, highly underrated, but also very dirty, gritty, dark, very dark, menacing, terrifying, has one of the best aliens out of the franchise, one of the best designs as well, absolutely amazing, and has some amazing performances, not only from Sigourney Weaver, but also her fellow castmates as well. But before I get into that, I just want to say it's great to be back. I did post on the community post that I had a lot of stuff going on, a lot of family stuff that I had to deal with on top. I've got other videos which I'm currently going through and editing, and have to redo some of them because I've been doing different sorts of source material for other stuff which will be posted during the week and then in the following days as well, and weeks. But I just wanted to say a big, huge thank you to everyone still tuning in. I'm really, really grateful. Thanks so much. And to everyone new, welcome. It's great to see. It's great to hear from y'all. So let's get into it. So we know that David Fincher had an extremely hard time with Alien 3. Not only did it go over budget, but there was a lot of studio interference. There was a lot of fights behind the scenes as well. They went over time, needed more money. There was so many different scripts going around for Alien 3 where everything was being tossed around. There's an unproduced William Gibson script, which I'm familiar with, and I have heard lots about William Gibson's unproduced script, which was where it was set on a planet where there were monks, but it was also a wood planet, which has some very, very interesting themes to it as well. There was scripts tossed around where Newt, Hicks, and Bishop were still alive. So there's all this stuff that behind the scenes, just ultimately David Fincher had an extremely hard time with, especially with the studio interference, which I full-heartedly respect David Fincher for trying to push for what he wanted in this film, and ultimately he was shat on every single time. And I just think as a director, you shouldn't have to take that sort of shit. And there's a lot of problems with Alien 3, don't get me wrong. But as a whole, I think David Fincher did the best he could with what he had. And Alien 3, in my opinion, is one of my favorites. It's very, very dear to me. I absolutely loved Alien 3. David Fincher did an amazing job. Very, very different film, set apart from the first and second part, which is, there's a lot to say about Alien 3, and it's very, very gory as well. And just very, very dark. There's a lot of dark things in this. A lot of it is death as well. And it's just an amazing, I thought it was an amazing film, from the likes of Charles Dance, Brian Glover, Charles S. Dutton, Ralph Brown, Paul McGann, Danny Webb, Lance Hendrickson as Bishop from Aliens and Bishop 2, Holt McKelney and Pete Postlethwaite. They were all a fantastic... Oh, and Daniel Edmond. They were absolutely fantastic. And no matter how much troubled production that this faced. Ultimately, the movie that we got was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Although there's two different versions, alternate versions, where the original alien, the alien or the runner, as I like to call it, or the dog alien, is one of my favorite alien designs. My absolute favorite. It still has that that really organic biomechanical feel of Alien and Aliens and H.R. Geiger's design, but it has a much more slim, erotic sort of feel that H.R. Geiger puts into a lot of his works, which I absolutely loved. And not to mention, the runner, or the dog alien, originally came out of a Rottweiler, but in the alternate version, it comes out of a cow. And there's also another scene in which it's not a face hugger that gets the cow. It is actually a queen face hugger that has webbed finger feet. And it's an absolutely amazing design. And that was in the alternate take for that. So, and if you watch the special editions, they're there. There's a lot in the in some of the cut footage as well that adds to the film, that makes it even darker, which I absolutely fucking loved. Alien 3 is very, very highly underrated, no matter how people see it or how you wanted it to go. There's a lot of things in this film that I really, really respect. Some of the decisions I didn't like for a fact that you kill off 3 fan favorites in the span of 5 minutes, and that is Newt, Bishop, and Hicks. And that decision was very, 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 very hard to swallow. But I can sort of respect it in a way, because it brings the focus back onto Ripley and the fact that she's in a prison full of men on this planet. Fiorina 161, or Fury 161. And it really shows you that what David Fincher was dished out, he still respectively gave us a film that really, even though it divided a lot of people, I know there's a people out there that respect this film, that really, really enjoy this film, and it's a very, very highly underrated film. The cinematography is amazing. The production company, obviously, is Brandywine Productions, distributed by 20th Century Fox. But initially, when it came out on May 22nd, 1992, this film was very, very divided. And I don't understand why Alien 3 gets the hate that it does. I mean, I know it's very, very different, and it divides a lot of people. I know that for a fact. But in my opinion, Alien 3, it has its down points to it. I think ultimately obviously the second film was about, motherhood, respectively, but also getting your voice back and ultimately being the badass that you are, to number 3 being completely lost because you failed to protect them. But it's also the resilience that Sigourney Weaver's character has, Ripley, that really pushes her and drives her in this film to really ultimately become the badass that she is again, to really face the monster that really fucked with her head and really fucked with her life for, years. And ultimately, this film really does, it's all about loss, death, but it's ultimately also about, finding resilience, finding hope in pretty much a bleak atmosphere, and driving these men to not fight amongst themselves and kill themselves, and but to all stand together and fight against the alien, which ultimately is just a fantastic film. And the ending for me is just really, really sad, but ultimately it's also very, very poignant, because for 3 films, Ripley fought this thing, and through nightmares, through being terrified, but also through resilience and hope, and that she ultimately came out of it, that she won, that she was going to win against this thing and come out on top. While Alien 3 does things very, very differently, and a lot of people didn't like the cast and stuff like that, it ultimately proves that this film works as, within the franchise, because ultimately it gives you a different understanding and a different look at how an alien film can be. It doesn't have to have all these it doesn't have to have so many characters in it where you get muddled up and you got to try and character develop as many characters as you can, while obviously some of them are just for plot point, they're going to die anyway. But this one ultimately really did up the ante and ultimately kill off 3 fan favorites at the start, and ultimately proves that within a franchise like Alien, you're going to lose some of your fan favorites. Although I know that David Fincher didn't want to go that route with Ripley, with Newt, Hicks, and Bishop, but there was so much studio interference, and they wanted it to go in a different direction. And I ultimately feel so bad for David Fincher that he had to reject his own film and take his own name off this film, because ultimately the studio was so greedy and couldn't let a director see his own vision out, where over the years now, there are so many directors now that are, have their own vision for a film and are allowed to do that, especially Fede Alvarez with Alien Romulus, which is an absolutely fucking fantastic film, one of my fucking favorites, number 1 for me. But Fede Alvarez was involved all the way. He was involved with all the trailers that were cut. He was involved with how everything panned out. He consulted Ridley Scott. He consulted the original members that worked on the original Alien film. There was so much that Fede Alvarez was involved with and was allowed to do as a director and have control over. I feel like David Fincher really should have had that sort of control, and it's just a shame that he didn't. But I really hope that, over the years, that David Fincher does really look at this film, not for all the bad stuff that happened, but ultimately be proud of the fact that Alien 3 exists, and there's people like myself that really, really cherish that film. I really do. It's an amazing film, one that Sigourney Weaver truly shines in as well, being that it's ultimately very gritty and dark and just dirty. But ultimately, she comes out on top and shows that she was the right choice to continue this franchise. And honestly, Alien 3 really does stand out as one of my all-time favorites. I mean, I absolutely respect and love Alien and Aliens, but Alien 3 for me is one of those films that really is just, it's a different film altogether, and it really does go to show you, even though you kill off certain characters, it can still work, but could have changed a few little things. And I get that David Fincher couldn't do that, and couldn't see his original vision through. So I completely understand that. But what do you all think? I'd love to hear from other people, because honestly, Alien 3 is just so highly underrated in the science fiction horror community. I really want to hear from those people that feel my passion for it as well. Like, what do they think? Like, what were their best aspects of Alien 3? The script, the alien itself, Sigourney Weaver as Ripley. Just in general, Alien 3 is an amazing film. And, you know, as much shit as I've copped over the years from just other people, you know, I've spoken to over the years saying, oh my God, you really liked Alien 3? That's so blasphemous. Like, we don't consider that part of the franchise. I do. And I mean, honestly, it is. It's part of the franchise. I mean, they're all connected. Aliens, Alien 3, and Alien Resurrection. And obviously, Aliens, and now we got Alien Romulus, which is the one in between Alien and Aliens. And then from there, who knows? But Fede Alvarez is the right person to continue the Alien franchise, because after Alien Romulus, absolutely fucking amazing film. Go check out my review for that, people, because it was a stunning film. Absolutely stunning. There's lots of people out there that poo-pooed it and said it was absolutely horrible, but meh, don't believe the haters. It's an absolutely fucking-tastic film. So is Alien 3. So is all the films. But with Alien 3 being my absolute favourite, along with Alien Romulus. Alien Romulus is my number one. But Alien 3 is also collectively my number one with Alien Romulus because, man, those films really hit. So did Alien and Aliens, but, you know, that's just my take on it. I have passion for all these films, but Alien 3 is one of those ones that is just never really spoken about a lot, and I really just wanted to get it out there and really speak to people about the fact that my passion about Alien 3 is that, you know, in the years to come, this film will be one that is just, will become really, really popular again within the franchise. I honestly do, because as much as people hated it, it still has a lot of practical effects. The alien was practical and stuff like that. It was all practical, except where you needed CGI. But even then, back in 1992, there wasn't a lot with CGI. It was very basic. So no matter how you look at it, Alien 3 for me was a fucking fantastic sci-fi horror masterpiece with some flaws, but those flaws really are minimal in the respect that Alien 3 really does deserve a lot more love from the horror science fiction community. It really, really does. But other than that, thanks so much, guys, for tuning in. I've enjoyed myself talking about this film and just really being absolutely passionate about films in general that I really, really like and love. And Alien 3 for me is just one of those ones where I'll just continue to watch and watch and watch among the other Alien films. Because, honestly, David Fincher's Alien 3 is just one of those films where you can full-heartedly see what he wanted to do, but couldn't realise his true vision. But the film that we ultimately got from him is just great. It's just great, and I love it, and I really do. I really love it. If anyone has seen the assembly cut, which I have, there's a lot of that stuff that was cut from the film that's back in this film that makes the runtime more, that runs more time into the normal theatrical runtime and adds a lot more. And let me tell you, the assembly cut didn't have Fincher's involvement. And I know the assembly cut received a warmer reception, but I feel like, too, a lot of people shat on David Fincher, and that was just completely unfair. And I think the studio ultimately really has a lot to say, should really ultimately apologise for the way that they actually treated David Fincher. I honestly do, because no director that wants to see a vision of a film be tarnished, and their reputation tarnished because of ultimately the way that the film turned out, when they ultimately had no control over what was meant to be cut and what was meant to stay in, because that was all the studio's fault. But ultimately, I loved this film. For me, Alien 3 is a 10 out of 10, absolutely fantastic film. But from there, I'll leave it at that, and I will see you guys with other videos down the track. All right, guys, take it easy and have a good afternoon. Bye.